everybody, welcome to episode 3 of Scotland Inspires. If you haven't seen Scotland Inspires before, then I'd like to just tell you a wee bit about it. Scotland Inspires is a YouTube series which is highlighting some of the interesting, creative, inspirational things that are happening here in Scotland. So I'm very excited about this project. Part of what I'm doing is using my authentic voice to speak from the heart and to create social change from there. And I'm really excited to be welcoming a whole range of guests as part of this video series. So today we have the lovely Dave McAuley here today. Thanks for coming. And Dave and I have actually had an interesting day already because Dave was delivering a really connected workshop on mindfulness that was around the topic of self-compassion, and that happened this morning at a studio in the West End in Ashton Lane in Glasgow. So it was a really lovely experience, so thanks very much for holding that space for us.
No problem.
It was very enjoyable and everybody seemed to really enjoy themselves. So welcome to Scotland Inspires.
Thank you for asking me to come along and talk.
I really value the work that you're doing, and I really appreciate it and have been inspired by the different things that you're doing. So I kind of feel like it might be quite interesting for Dave to talk about some of the things that he's doing, because he very much seems to be moving in lots of different directions, which ultimately all feel connected as well. Yeah. So I'll let you maybe talk to us about that today.
Yeah. So thanks, Claire, for spending time with me today and letting me share this message. And yeah, the talk this morning was on self-compassion, and it's about how we can have more compassion for ourselves. And notice I touch my heart when I do that. That's one way that we can show compassion for ourselves, is through touch. And it's something that I feel very passionately about, that we don't really share enough self-compassion with ourselves, but we can do it towards others. And it can be a very healing process, and it's certainly something I've benefited from over the years. So the meetup group is a mindfulness meetup group that happens every 2 weeks, and we discuss a different topic on mindfulness, and it's just to share it with the local community in and around Glasgow at the Movement Studio in Ashton Lane. And it's a mixture of meditations, talks, and maybe the odd YouTube or TED Talk video based on that message that week. So that was self-compassion. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey of mindfulness for me, definitely, over the last few years.
Something I really enjoyed about your message this morning actually was your recognition of our common humanity. So I think that often we are all experiencing things that we hide away, and that we feel like there's something wrong with us, or that we're different, or that other people don't feel these things. I really enjoyed that you voiced that this morning and said, hey, we all feel these things. This is a common human experience. And I felt a sense of relief actually from myself and from other people within the space to have that recognised and acknowledged.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do all share this common experience. It's when we're beating ourselves up, or when we're being quite tough on ourselves, we can really internalise it, and it's all part of the human struggle. We all face these struggles, and to know that through the sharing today that people share different experiences of self-compassion, and to know that we're not alone is sometimes a very healing part of the process. Self-compassion. So.
That's beautiful, and I'd be really interested to hear how this message of self-compassion is received perhaps by people in Scotland, has been received by people who come along to the workshops, or by people that you know. What has been your experience?
I think it's been a very positive experience for people that have come along. They've often come along because they're maybe struggling at that point in their life, so they can be struggling with stress or anxiety, or any conditions like OCD, or something where they've really found a need to come along and find something to help them get through that time. And mindfulness is an excellent way to do that, because not only are you doing it in a safe place with other people who are perhaps on similar journeys to yourself, but This stuff's been proven through neuroscience to have massive benefits to people. It can help shrink that reactive part of the brain and grow the more sort of new brain and prefrontal cortex, and develop more compassion and develop more awareness, and just to enjoy life and not get so caught up in the stories that we can tell ourselves. So it's been great to see the transformations in people, to have that kind of healing, you know, and to equip them with tools that they can use on a day-to-day basis, not just something that's a quick fix. It's a self-care that they can carry with them through their whole life, you know. So it's brilliant. I just love it, you know.
I think that's amazing, and I'm really interested to hear, and I'm sure other people are interested to hear, have you always been interested in mindfulness, or is this something that you have learned along the way?
No, probably only the last 4 or 5 years I've really got into mindfulness. Definitely was very unmindful in my youth, in terms of, you know, when I first moved to London from a very small town in Scotland, I experienced a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, a lot of social anxiety from being in a big city. And I moved there alone when I was 16. So it was quite a lot to put on my shoulders, and I found a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety. And for coping mechanisms, I turned to the usual vices of alcohol and drugs. And, you know, I probably smoked too much weed when I was younger. And so I was quite an unmindful person through a lot of my life. Fortunately, through my partner of 20 years, Justine, she helped pull me back from that. And I, you know, sort of discovered mindfulness and meditation. And that's when I really sort of changed my outlook on life and began to eat healthily and look at nutrition and diet. Just be more aware of what I had been doing to my body, and to transform myself, really. So,
and that's really inspiring and really, really interesting. I'm sure most of us can resonate with those messages of turning to unhealthy coping mechanisms. I know I certainly did. I drank a lot of alcohol and took drugs and all that kind of stuff. And Dave and I were actually having a really interesting conversation. We went out for lunch, so we were talking a lot about this at lunchtime actually as well. So hopefully we can bring some of that conversation back in as well. I think it's something that a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah.
A lot of the normal things that we do in society, for example, drinking alcohol excessively, taking drugs or whatever, then they have a negative impact on us. So I'm just wondering what your journey was. You said that your partner was quite a core part of you moving towards a healthier way of being.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that helped you along the way?
I think it was really just a realization that you know, life is precious. There'd been a few deaths in my family, and I'd realized the sort of you know, life is precious and very fleeting, and you know, we need to make the most of it while we're on this planet. But also getting involved with organisations like Live Your Legend really helped me, because they inspire people to go out and be the best version of themselves, and also to share that message with other people to help them find their own passion in life. And that's a message that really sort of connected with me. Scott Dinsmore, who's unfortunately passed, had set up Live Your Legend, and he was such an inspirational figure to me. How he lived his life, he, you know, grasped it by the horns and really sort of lived his life to the fullest. And I thought, that's what I need to be doing. I need to be, you know, living my life to the fullest, but also becoming a self-experimenter, if you like. So finding the things that really resonate with me, and that's been meditation and yoga and healthy living, and just having adventures, you know, trying new things that push me outside of my comfort zone. So yeah, it's just a case of trying new things and trying different things, and picking the things that really worked for me to get me on my journey to, I guess, recovery. Yeah.
So it sounds like you used to seek adventures in more unhealthy ways, and now you're seeking adventures and to experience the fullness of life in healthier ways. Would you say that's
absolutely true? I think when I moved to London, it was at the height of the rave scene. So I had the Smiley t-shirt, I had the ecstasy tablets, I had the marijuana, I had the parties, I had the warehouse parties, and yeah, I'm not going to say that I regret those times, because it's made me who I am today.
And you probably had a good time at the time.
I had an awesome time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
I had an awesome time, yeah.
exactly.
Some of it I can't remember, most of it I
Yeah.
can, but I think you need to kind of go through sometimes, you know, bad experiences to really appreciate the good experiences when you find them and when they come along. So that's I definitely don't regret those times. I maybe wish it hadn't gone on for quite so long, but you know, you find your path however you find your path. You know.
There's a quote, it's only once we truly experience the darkness that we can truly experience the light.
Totally.
And that life is about these contrasts. So that's something that I was thinking of when you were talking there about you have to experience some of the low points before you can move into the light. And also another quote that I was thinking of was by Confucius. You have two lives. The second one starts once you realise that you only have one. So just when you were talking about life being fleeting, life being short, I hear a lot of people say things like that, life's short, and I don't know whether we always fully absorb the gravity of what that message is actually saying, that actually we're all going to die one day.
I think we have a false feeling of immortality a lot of the time, that you know, we can do what we do and wake up and do it again, or you know, we're always going to be able to do that. And the fact is that we're all going to die, you know. And once we kind of embrace that and accept it, that can really help us to live, you know. So I think from my point of view, mindfulness actually helps slow down time. You know, it's almost like Matrix time, in terms of when you live in the present moment. That's all you really have. That's all we all really have. We can never tell what's going to happen in the future, and certainly can't change what's happened in the past unless we kind of develop Marty McFly Back to the Future skills. So I think it's important to be really present, and not just in life but with people. So in the conversations, and you spoke about authenticity, you know, being and showing up as your authentic self, you know, warts and all. And you know, people really appreciate that and will open up as well. You know,
so what are the sort of main benefits that you've experienced personally from practicing mindfulness? What have been the main things that have helped you?
An appreciation of everything, an appreciation of people, an appreciation of the beauty in people, an appreciation of nature, the beauty in myself that for a lot of time I kind of pushed down. You know, I grew up, I was bullied at school quite a lot, and that gave me a lot of negative self-doubt, and I was you know, I put on these masks of, you know, going out drinking or partying, and you know, really kind of being afraid almost to show my true self. And so what mindfulness has done is allowed me to just become who I am, and to live each moment, you know, and have a real appreciation and a richness to life, and the experience that we have, and all the people that are in it with me, sharing the journey. But also it's helped me to kind of slow down a little bit and reduce all that kind of stress and anxiety, so it's become kind of like very, very light, faint background noise. It never really kind of goes away once you've had a bit of anxiety, but it allows you to just be present and not worry so much about what might happen, because a lot of the times it's going to be, you know, you'll imagine something to be worse than it actually will be, like interviewing, for example. Yeah.
Yeah, so before we started, we just both took a little moment just to calm down and be more present, because we had a few issues with things like lights and cameras and the sun being too bright and all this sorts of stuff. So although this looks like the perfect setup, you know, it's taken us a wee while to get it together.
Yeah, I think the sun being too bright in Glasgow, which took me by surprise most often, you know. So
yeah, that's not something that happens very often.
No.
So there was something else I was quite keen to hear about your own experiences of taking your mindfulness practice into your workspace. If that's something that you would like to talk about.
Yeah, sure. So I work in a very kind of corporate environment, and I've seen firsthand. I had 6 weeks off through stress myself, and through the working environment, and it was I could see it in a lot of people that I was working with. You know, they're struggling to cope with the demands of a job and, you know, family and getting that life-work balance. And so we kind of started mindfulness drop-in sessions at work, so people can just come for half an hour in their lunchtime and just sit and be present and focus on their breath, or we do body scans, or we do different meditation types. And I've just seen a real change in a lot of the people that come along to those sessions in terms of, you know, less anxiety, less stress, less worry, and just a lot more enjoyment in life, you know. And it's made me feel really passionate about, you know, expanding this to other corporate organisations and places like the NHS and schools. I think need it as much as anyone. So it's made me really kind of passionate about sharing mindfulness on a bigger scale.
And I love that you've started where you are with what you have around you. I think that's probably one of the aspects I find most inspiring about the work that you do and the things that you've told me about, is that you've brought mindfulness, potentially something that's a bit woo-woo, a bit spiritual, into a very corporate environment, arguably where it's needed most. I think it's easy to surround yourself with people who think like you do, feel like you do, go into yoga studios, or, you know, go into mindfulness centres, or whatever you do. But actually, I think it takes a lot of courage to step forward with quite a radical message that challenges the status quo into a very corporate environment. And to be moving forwards from a space of wanting to help and wanting to share that message to help the people that are working there. I think that's a very courageous thing to do and a very admirable thing to do. So I just wanted to, I think you already knew that already, but I wanted to share that. And as a way to say to you guys, if you have a passion, if you have an interest in something, then be yourself and be the change you wish to see in the world. If you want a more compassionate world, be more compassionate. If you want to see more love in the world, be more loving. It sounds so simple, but it's something that I wasn't living, I wasn't practicing. I would be ranting about politics or about oppression or about inequality on Facebook, but I wasn't living those values of love. Not really in my life. It's easy to point fingers and to blame. It's so easy to do that. There's so many things in the world that aren't fair, that aren't equal, that we can blame. But rather than focusing your energy on that, to do something like you've done.
And the healing is always within yourself. You know, you always have that capability of self-healing, and, you know, focusing on the positive aspects of life. There's a really good meditation practice called Nourishing Joy and Happiness. When I first started meditating, I used to go quite deeply inside, and a lot of anxiety would come up about what had happened to me in the past and what I'd done and how I'd lived my life and how I was going to be living my life. But when I found this practice called Nourishing Joy and Happiness, it was look for the good things in your life, because there's good things. The fact that we have clean water, the fact that we have friends and family that care about us, the fact that we have a roof over our heads. There's all these elements of joy around us if we just have an awareness of it, you know, and it can bring so much joy and happiness to our lives, you know, rather than always maybe focusing on the negative aspects.
And even if there are negative aspects, what you have done is you have used the pain that you have experienced, the healing process that you've gone through, to then become a practitioner in that, to support other people. So you found something that works for you and thought, well, hey, if this works for me, then perhaps this would work for other people. And that's something that I've done as well, in terms of expressing my authenticity, working on building a more positive relationship with myself, and then running workshops to support people to do the same. And I think we often find that our mess is our message. Now, that's not me that came up with that quote. That's an amazing guy. It's a good one called Preston Smiles. If you haven't, if you're not aware of him, definitely check him out. But your mess becomes your message, and that sometimes these things in life we experience so much from them, and then they actually provide us with a gift that we can give and share to others.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. It's something that I've felt very passionately about. When I've found something that has healed me, you know, I want to be able to. There's a one of the pillars of Live Your Legend is become a self-expert, and that's, you know, whatever area of life that is, whether it's, you know, practicing yoga, or whether it's mindfulness, or whether it's one of the reasons I became a qualified hypnotherapist is because I got the benefit from hypnotherapy myself. You know, when I was struggling with stress, it worked for me, and you know, I always tend to grab onto these things quite quickly. That, you know, if it worked for me, then I want to learn as much about that as possible, qualify, and then be able to help other people. I mean, obviously you have to kind of manage your own energy to a certain extent, because you need to be able to look after yourself first before you can look after others. So you have to be careful you don't get too bogged down with too many things, which is what I've been victim of in the past. But you find what resonates with you, and you find what message you can deliver and help people with, and you just do it, and you know, learn as much about it as possible. You know?
And that goes back to what we were talking earlier about self-compassion, also linking to self-love, that you must fill up your own cup first before you start pouring out.
Totally.
If you try and pour out from an empty cup, there's nothing left.
There's nothing
that's something that I have done, tried to pour out from an empty cup. It's also that other analogy when you're in the aeroplane and they're talking about the safety guidelines at the start, and they say put your own mask on before you put other people's masks on. So something we were talking a wee bit about this morning is this idea of selfishness, that somehow our society has taught us that looking after ourselves, that loving ourselves, that appreciating ourselves, that having compassion for ourselves is somehow a selfish act. So what are some of the thoughts that you have around that?
Well, I think that we can be judged in society that when we're looking after ourselves, or when we're doing things for ourselves, people can, or I think it's more us that can feel like we're being selfish, rather than other people saying they're selfish, they're going to yoga again.
Right.
You know, I don't think people maybe judge you like that, but I think you can self-judge that for yourself. For example, if you feel like you need to help somebody, or somebody's struggling, and you want to go out and do something, then you think, oh, I'm being a bit selfish, I need to be there for that person. But if this is something that you feel you really need to do for your own benefit, then you should really do that, because then you'll be in a better position to help somebody. I practice Kundalini yoga at the movement studio every kind of Monday night, and that's something that has really sort of helped me get in touch with my own kind of consciousness, and my ability to sort of listen to people, and really kind of genuinely listen to people with mindfulness to what they're actually saying, and not thinking about how I'm going to respond, or what I'm going to say, or how it relates to me. It's really just being there and listening to that person, and what they're actually saying to me, and also what they're not saying, you know. So and getting them to bring that out. I think it takes a lot of skill, and you need to have that kind of strength, but also a little bit of distance to, you know, not take on board all that kind of struggle that somebody might be having. So the self-care is definitely really important, and not something that I would consider to be selfishness at all.
And before I forget, there's something else that I'd really love to ask you about. I'd love to ask you about your view on how children could incorporate mindfulness, because I believe this is something that you have an interest in also. So I'd love to hear, and I'm sure everybody else would love to hear, about your thoughts around how mindfulness could help children, and how they can go about that, or how that should be or could be incorporated into their lives.
Yeah, so I trained with Youth Mindfulness in Glasgow here last year on their Kids Teacher programme. And this is like a 16-week program that you can deliver to children in schools or the local community. And there's already a few schools that are adopting it, but I think really the onus is on the kind of teachers and the schools themselves to really embrace the possibilities that mindfulness can offer kids. Because I know that when I was a kid, school was tough enough, but nowadays I think kids have a whole new different kind of pressure in terms of social media, mobile phone usage. I'm not saying that the internet is not a real world, but I think it can lack that sort of connection. I know that we've had a few talks online that have been maybe misconstrued or gone off on tangents, and so I think it's quite a dangerous thing for kids to just have put on top of them like that without having maybe the skills to say, well, how is this making me feel? How am I going to deal with this? How am I going to cope with this? Instead of just reacting, because I think that's where a lot of the stress and anxiety and FOMO, fear of missing out, is a huge problem. And so I think really the whole school program needs looking at in terms of the wellness of our children, and not just mindfulness, but also nutrition and health, and showing them what a healthy meal looks like, and how that technology can affect their sleep cycles if they use it late into the night, and all of these things. And I think to have a mindfulness program as part of the curriculum would be my ideal sort of nirvana for kids to have access to. So every kid, some kids will cope better than others at school, but there's going to be a lot of kids, I think, that are really going to struggle over the next decade if they don't have these skills to be present and develop empathy for their fellow school children and compassion. I've already seen loads of benefits from that from children that have had this training, and so I think it needs to be more widespread and adopted by Scottish government and really sort of globally,
I would agree with all of that. Something that I'm particularly passionate about is emotional health, and I would love to see emotions valued in society more than they currently are, and our emotional health valued, and I think that would, for me, start from a very young age. Apparently, I don't know the exact details of where this study was carried out, but apparently there was a survey carried out of loneliness, and for the first time ever, the age group of 18 to 24-year-olds was shown as being as lonely as people who were pensioners, and this is the first time that that's ever happened. So I agree with you around the internet can be a good way of connecting, but at the same time it's almost like it's an illusion of connection, where on the surface it looks like something's happening, but the real connection, the real energy exchange that comes from things like eye contact and being close to each other is missing. And yeah, Dave and I had a couple of I don't what would you call them? They were kind of like maybe
misunderstandings.
Well, differences of opinion, or almost a little bit like arguing a little bit. But what was really interesting is we both acknowledged that we hadn't felt that kind of push-pull energy from each other in person. But yet somehow there was things that you were writing that were really winding me up, and But I thank you for those experiences, because I was able to look at seeing where I had been triggered and why, and was this my stuff or was this his stuff, and it actually offered me a really good opportunity to look at that. And I was really glad when we were able to meet up in person afterwards, and we had a hug and we had a bit of a giggle about it. So but other people might not have, most people I would suggest,
especially children,
don't have that awareness. So things like cyberbullying and just things being taken the wrong way. So much is missing from text conversations. You can't hear tone of voice. There's there's so much missing. I
think there's so much in terms of body language as well, and eye contact, and just having that to and fro of a conversation where somebody, you might say something but it's taken the wrong way, and then you have a chance to actually say, oh no, I didn't mean that, because you can see the reaction in the other person. You can't see the reaction in the other person when you're online. You can just, it's quite cold, it's black and white, and so you can construe or read anything from it depending on where you are at that point in time. And I think we were both guilty of elements of misconstruing things and maybe kind of maybe not being so present in what we were saying. Certainly I find that when I'm online I become less mindful, so I can have a habit of getting passionate and carried away, and then boom, and it's gone. And I think, well, where did that come from? So I do agree. I think that especially things like self-harm amongst kids is on the rise, and anxiety levels are on the rise, and the NSPCC are getting an increase in calls from kids that are struggling with anxiety and depression, that are they should be thinking about their childhoods rather than thinking about these kind of struggles. And so I think it's really important for this to be taken on board by not just schools but parents. A lot of the responsibility has to come with the parents to set that example and to be more mindful, because the kids can be mindful at school but come home and their parents can be put on the TV, give them a tablet, and then leave them to their own devices, literally. And where's that emotional contact? Where's that contact with the parent? It's kind of maybe missing slightly. So.
We're social creatures, aren't we? And we need touch and love and connection. We need all these things. But I think sometimes in society it can sort of be seen as you're weak for wanting these things, or you're needy, or there can be negative connotations. And actually what I try and do in my practice is voice my needs, my wants, my desires, how I'm feeling, with confidence and with compassion, because I don't see myself as being less than because I voice these things. I used to be so closed off, and I wouldn't want to show people the real me, and that's where all my authenticity practice sort of comes in.
And same here. I think for me it was the fear of showing myself, for fear of being judged, or for fear of being not very interesting, or all those kind of negative things that we kind of say to ourselves. And I know that mine stemmed a lot from perhaps my upbringing, or the bullying, or being in a big city at a young age, when going from one extreme to the other, from a small town to the big city of London. That can cause a lot of problems. But I also think a lot of them were of my own manifestation, my own thoughts that caused those. And I think the problem I'm seeing a lot is people with their heads down in their phones, walking along the street. They're not actually being present for the person on the phone, and they're not actually walking down the street. They're kind of trying to multitask, and I think there's a real danger of them losing that kind of connection in face to face, and thinking it's just okay to send a text rather than spend time with somebody that they care about, because you can't replicate that human connection. And from running a group like Live Your Legend, you get a real sense of community and a real feeling and a real openness amongst people who are of similar mindset, where they're not afraid to open up and speak out. And you don't always get that online, and I think it's really important to get out into the real world, kids. There's so many things. I mean, we were talking about meetups earlier on, that we've both found them very powerful way of connecting with other people, and have been quite transformative for us in terms of linking up with people who are like-minded and like-hearted. So I feel like we could sit here all day and talk about this. We already did an hour before we got here in the juice garden.
So I kind of feel like just now might be a good time for us to sort of wrap up. Otherwise, we'll probably be here for the rest of the day.
Yeah, sure.
So I wanted to say thank you for coming
Thank you for asking me.
And perhaps maybe you could just recap with some of the ways that you support people. If anybody is out there that's maybe looking to maybe connect with your message, is interested in learning more about mindfulness, about nutrition, and maybe you could let people know.
Sure.
Legend,
so if you go on meetup.com, you'll search for Live Your Legend, and you'll be able to find the group there, and that's to help people discover their passions in life, and create a community of people that are supporting each other on their journey of self-discovery. And there's also the Glasgow Mindfulness meetup group on there as well, which we run every 2 weeks. And they're both free groups to come along to. That's at the Movement Studio every few weeks. My own mindfulness courses and hypnotherapy sessions, you can find me on sunlightmind.com, and book a one-to-one, or book one of the courses that will be coming up in the summer. And we've got a yoga retreat and mindfulness retreat at Lendrick Lodge in July, which I'm really looking forward to. My good friend Jess, who's an awesome yoga teacher, and that's open to all levels, including myself, because I'm not a very advanced level myself. But so I just really look forward to connecting with anyone who might be struggling with any kind of stress or anxiety in their life, or just needs to find a direction or a purpose. Just get in touch, because one of the comments from Scott Dinsmore from Live Your Legend was, do something that matters, and that's what I believe in. You know, to give something back to the community and help others is a huge part of what I'm about. So that's it.
Yeah, so do something that matters. That's a great phrase to end on. I think that sums up, because like I was saying earlier on, and we have sort of spoken about maybe some of the things that aren't particularly healthy in society, but we all have a choice how we show up. We all have a choice. We can choose to set up groups, we can choose to attend groups, we can choose to listen to the voice within and follow our heart and see where that takes us, and see where we have adventures there.
And as Susan Jeffers said, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Fabulous. Feel the fear and do it anyway, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon. So we have episode 4 coming up. So we have a really special guest for episode 4, and we look forward to seeing you all then. Okay, bye.